your vision. It's not easy what you do. You have a lot of passion towards it, and most visionaries or entrepreneurs like yourself, it can be a struggle, right? Getting commitments and raising money, and it's what it takes to do good things in the community. All right, guys, I have today a very special guest. He's a guy that has brought a ton of motivation, not just to me, my businesses, but also my religion since I've been almost 15 years old. This guy is full of motivation and love. He means his career is his passion. He is a pastor and a youth minister, which makes a ton of sense today. He went to Hope Church at my early days, and that's where I was able to meet this special individual. Working on UND campuses to working anywhere in the town of Grand Forks, you can see this guy with his fingerprints all over the community and all over my life. So he's here to help making young lives better through a program called YoungLife, which is super special, and we'll dive deeper into that. But I have here in the studio today, Keith Becker. I appreciate having you, man.
Good to be here today.
Cool. We have good conversations. We do the Chick-fil-A conversations, and we at least do that annually, but maybe we can make that more often. But you got a lot going on for, a pastor. You're doing that plus more. And anyway, I wanna talk though, before we get into all of that. You got to tell people your story. You have a special one, and I want to make sure we all get to hear it.
Oh, Mark, you're awesome. And it's weird to even hear you say pastor because we're friends first and foremost. But yes, I did get that title along the way.
Yeah.
And so you go back in time. I'm a Grand Forks guy, more or less like you. My parents and heritage is all here, but they took jobs out of college in Minneapolis. And that's where I spent most of my growing up years, was Minneapolis or in the Denver area.
Okay.
And so I have this experience where I have a little bit of ties to Grand Forks, but that I've lived in the big cities. I decided to come back and pursue my college degree here, kind of be like Dad. He was a big business corporate guy. That's why we traveled around. And I was like, I like that. I want to do that. So I came back, did the business school thing here at UND, had a great experience at my days with UND, and got a job out of college. It was a pretty good deal. It was 1990s, and there's a bit of a slowdown in the economy. So I took a position with a marketing firm out in New Jersey that my friend helped me get. Wow. And it was a crazy first job. Basically, I went around and traveled to college campuses and marketed like different products to college kids.
Okay.
And I can see now, looking back, how God was preparing me for what I do now a lot on college campuses and just being able to present an opportunity or a gospel message of good news to students.
Yeah.
But I did that, and along the way, I started saying, is there any way to integrate my faith with my business interests and calling? And I learned that there was some of these larger Christian organizations that needed a help in the business of ministry.
Okay.
And so I moved back to Colorado, took a position with one of those large companies or large organizations as a nonprofit, and I did that for about a decade.
Wow.
And along the way, they offered some free classes at the seminaries. And I was like, I'm not a pastor, but I've kind of always liked God, and I want to learn, especially there's this thing called the Old Testament that like no one understands. And I was like, I better take one of those classes. And I did. And I was like,
this is college?
No, this is after college.
This is after college. Okay, you got a job.
So I've worked in the corporate world. I left the corporate world, and I then moved back to Colorado to take this position with this large nonprofit to help them run the business side of their ministry.
Wow.
And then I took these classes on the side.
I got it. Okay.
Follow the track in there?
Yeah.
So, stop me if I run too fast.
Well, yeah, you're good. I want to talk about even your Minneapolis to Denver trip as a kid. I want to know how you got to be Keith all the way through. So before I want you to get too deep, I want you to talk about your young life of yourself.
Okay.
And how we can adapt that to who you're teaching today. Because obviously you had a vision when you were younger.
Yeah, good point, Mark. Well, you go back, it does start there.
Yeah.
You're right on. And I was running by it a little fast, and glad you put the brakes on, because if you go back, when we moved from Minneapolis to Denver, I was in 7th grade.
7th grade, okay.
And that was my dad, I was the oldest, and he's like, it's a little hard time to move the family, but Keith can figure it out, and my younger sisters were fine, and they adapted just fine. But I was the cool kid in Minneapolis, and I moved to Denver, and I got to tell you, the kid next door was, I thought, a cool kid. And the very first day, we got on the bus, rode it to school, because I moved there right before school started, and he's like, on the bus, Keith, meet me at my lockers at the lunch hour. I'm like, okay. And we met him. And what did he want to do? He wanted to skip the second half of the day of school, ditch classes, and go to the local 7-Eleven and get some Slurpees. And I was like, oh, yeah. And, my parents had raised me, to be a good boy, whatever, and to pursue right things.
Okay.
And if you can remember those little imageries of a devil and an angel kind of thing, I had the angel on my one shoulder saying, Keith, it's not right to skip school. And the devil on the other side saying, go for it, be cool, you're going to have a great day, just missing class. And I was having this battle, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be the weird kid the first day. I'm going to go with them. And we got almost off the property. And I couldn't do it. There was something in that said, this is wrong, Keith. You can't do it. And I said, guys, I got to go back. And of course, that didn't befriend me to those dudes.
Wow.
And for the rest of that semester, almost that whole 7th grade year, it was one of the worst points in my life because they berated me on that bus. They would make my life. I had a paper route, and they would wait for me to come around the corner and help me with snowballs in the wintertime.
Oh man!
And it was just classic middle school meanness, right?
Yeah, 7th grade,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I was just like, and all for what I thought, was trying to do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And I that changed the direction of my life so crazily because up until that point, faith for me was something you just did because mom and dad brought you to church, right? That was all.
Okay.
But at that point, I remember praying for the first time, like, God, help me make friends, help me not have to deal with these bullies, if you will.
Yeah.
Help me to know how to be the person I need to be. And I remember praying, and God didn't answer the prayer I wanted. I wanted us to move back to Minnesota where all my friends were.
Yeah.
And God did not do that. But God brought me to my parents made me go to a church, but there was a youth leader who had been with YoungLife. And he knew he could see I was standing off in the distance. I didn't want to be as connected. He could see my attitude on my face. And he approached me still. He pursued me right where I was at. And he said, Keith, how about would you like to come with me and a couple of other kids from this group? And I'll teach you how to go fly fishing up in the mountains. I was like, oh. Well, that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I remember to this day getting in a little Toyota pickup and myself and this other kid and him, and we were driving up, and I can still tell you the stories he told on that trip.
Really?
And I can still tell you about how I learned to do the rod and everything. And that day changed the trajectory of my life because this youth leader, his name is Eugene, taught me what it means to be accepted. And he helped correlate that to God, and that God accepts me, and I don't have to earn God's favor and be a good kid.
Yeah.
I just get accepted whether I'm a good kid or not. He loves me.
That's
and that
super cool.
acceptance has changed the trajectory of my heart, has given me an acceptance for everybody else, and wants them to know that there's a God that they don't have to earn his favor, but he loves them just as they are.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad we went back.
Yeah.
I know. That's like the turning point.
It is.
That's a great story.
And that story is what propels me in this next chapter of this life.
Yeah.
And so I was in seminaries where I left off, right?
Okay, yep.
And I was working still at the nonprofit, taking these classes, and my pastor knew I was taking these classes, and he goes, Keith, what are you doing this morning? I go, well, I'm just trying to learn a little bit. I want to still be a business, nonprofit leader. And he goes, why don't you think about being a pastor? And if you do, you got to get this degree called a Master's of Divinity. And that means you have to take the language. You have to take ancient Hebrew, ancient Greek to understand how to read the text in its original lettering. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's not me. I'm not a pastor.
Yeah.
And he goes, Keith, look at your life. You've been working with these, like that time I was doing a lot of donor relations and working with our mega donors. He goes, you're pastoring their hearts because you get, if someone can talk to you about their finances, they can talk to you about almost anything. And they go, you can be real in their life, and you've led these people. And then at the same time, you love these teenagers that you spend your nights and weekends taking to camp and doing stuff like that. And I'm like, I guess I kind of am a pastor. I never thought of it. And then I go, but I could never preach. I don't know. They go, that's what the seminary did teach me how to understand the Old Testament and the New and be able to share the good news. And so today, some people do call me Pastor Keith because I did get the degree, came back here to Grand Forks, worked for the last 12 years at Hope Church, met you along the way, amazing times there, and then 2 years ago, launched this new YoungLife ministry. Yeah,
you took the leap. No, you're awesome. You're all over the Grand Forks community. I think I remember, some of your story. Like, I was probably pouring curb or pouring concrete somewhere on UND campus. There's Keith.
Yeah.
I was like, you're like the angel that followed me a little bit around, and you've always been a blessing. Whenever it's like, whether it's a hard day or whatever, it's like your attitude and your inspiration for me, rubs off, which is good Business can be tough.
It can be, Mark.
And frustrating. So
I remember those early years, but I remember at the turning point was meeting, I think at the old, now it's the Red Pepper on South Washington, but whatever that restaurant used to be, and with the pork, the pig, what was it called?
Yeah, the Wild Hog.
Wild Hog, and I remember seeing you taking on a new chapter in your life, and I got so excited for where you were going with it, and I knew where you and Chelsea had been married and all that, but that was the turning point in my life to see you go from young Mark to Mark leading Mark.
I've had different points in my life where I think entrepreneurial life, you never know where life is going to take you, especially you got to be a little risk adverse.
For sure.
Because when we met, you were, when I've known, like I said, it's from Hope Church. You're obviously an inspiration around the whole community with that church. And then you took your leap. So when did you take your leap?
There's a saying in the Bible. I'll give you an Old Testament story. A lot of us know this. There's a gal named Esther, and Esther was a queen. She was a Jewish person, but she was a queen of the enemy's empire. She got taken into as a slave, but the king identified her as one of the beautiful ones and said, "I want you in my court." And along the way, he goes, "You're my favorite of all the people in my court. You can be my queen." And then this Queen Esther heard about some trouble that was coming to the Jewish people from this Persian king, and her brother said, "Esther, there's a reason why you become queen. It's not just because you're beautiful, of favor, but for today, it could be the reason God's put you there to bring salvation to his people." And sure enough, he challenged his sister, who was the queen, to go talk to the king, to not do what he was going to do to hurt the Jewish people. And that's the story, is that queen, for such a day as this, you were born. And when you say I'm known in this community, I believe that part of the reason God's put me here with all the UND ties, the city of Grand Forks ties, I'm really involved in the business community through the chamber.
Right.
I just feel like God's put me here to kind of be not just a pastor to a small certain chunk of people, but just to care for people wherever they are. Everyone I meet, at the grocery store, the restaurant, whatever, that's a person that you're called to care for. Right. And that's part of my story.
Right. Yeah. Well, you probably, I feel like you never have a bad day either.
Oh, not true. Not true, Mark. No. Although, let me raise it. We're going to bring a speaker one of these days in, and he has, some of you know him, but his name's Hunter Peaky, and he has his whole mantra: no bad days. There are going to be tough days, but no bad days. Yeah. So let me rephrase that. I'm trying to work on my attitude and say, no bad days, only tough days.
I like that because as an entrepreneur, you have plenty of tough days. They're not bad days. We get to wake up. We get to do what we want to do.
Exactly.
We don't have to do anything. I kind of live with that mentality. And then I live with the mentality of everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
And that leaves peace with me a little bit, as even if I work really hard after something and it doesn't come to fruition, then, and I live okay with it. Otherwise, it builds up anxiety, which builds up stress, which builds up everything. You're not sleeping, you're sweating, whatever. You and I can't live with that.
Yeah, you and I both love people that are go-getters, entrepreneurs, dreamers. Yes. I have a group of names on my list at home. I call them my dream big people, and you're on that because there's a dreamer, there's a mover, but at the same time, people who are like that are usually positive, but there's doubts that are behind the scenes.
Yep.
And you just nailed them. What you have to do is you have to have a sense of peace, a sense of trust that there's a God that has a master plan. You just alluded to that, and he's going to direct you if you submit your ways to him, and that just leaves you a little bit more free to go with it and to take those risks, but at the same time also not beat yourself up when the things aren't going well.
Right.
So proud of you, man.
Yeah, faith is something I've always, I need to prepare to work harder. You know what I mean? It's always something that you can improve on, and I'm challenging myself to keep going in that direction.
I know you are. And, that's what you and I get together on.
Yeah, I know.
I like to push you a little bit.
You help me. You gotta have a mentor in each area of your life. Health, your business, your faith, your education. So you gotta have a mentor for each area, and it's not the same mentor.
That's exactly it. So often, especially if you're talking to any college or 20-year-old. They oftentimes associate a mentor as someone who's helping with all areas of their life, their dating life, their career life, and it is. Oftentimes, there's one or two significant people outside of the parent and that's one of the biggest factors of success in today's across the board is if you have one or two adults who invest in the life of a young person outside of their parents, their trajectory of that young person's life is amazingly good. But as you get older, you realize your mentors are no longer just going to be one or two people. They're going to be a hand, and you identify each area you just nailed. So.
Yeah. Well, you're my mentor in religion so and faith. So but it's true. You got to have a different mentor for each area. Yes. Otherwise, it's just everyone's specifically niched, and that's why we're good entrepreneurs in our way. Because if we're good at everything, we're probably good at none of them. You know what I mean? All right. Well, let's talk about a little bit where we are getting to today, and what you're doing now, and what we're trying to do. Because we kind of host some common things like golf tournaments, and you're wearing the YoungLife. That's the first annual.
That's the first one. Yeah. I still like the first.
I like that. But anyway, we do a golf tournament, tries to raise money. I just try to think good things for the community. That's one of my, core values is make a difference. And if I can make a difference in someone's life being a mentor, or if I can make a difference in someone's life in the community, just make an impact. And I think it's for sure what you stand for. I mean, you do that so well. But tell me a little bit, what are you doing today? What is Keith? So a couple years ago you jumped in.
Yep. Okay.
Maybe tell us about that.
All right. So a couple years ago, I was the executive pastor at Hope, which is, once again, Hope emerged as one of the larger nonprofits in our city. It's a church, as most people know, but it's got an entity owns the Grand Cities Mall. It has a care center to help people who are needing food or other assistance. Then it has this big mass, I think it's the largest daycare in town now. And
really?
And so and I was trying to be my role was supposed to be somewhat teaching and pastoring people, but also running the business side of the church. And the business side of the church was just growing. And I love it. God's doing a great thing there, but it got to be pretty overwhelming. I remember I was having to sign paperwork for those PPP loans in the pandemic era to help, pretend that would turn into grants. And I remember going, this is getting big. And I remember just feeling that I got a lot of responsibilities, and I go, this is good, but it's not where I want to spend the bulk of my time. I want to spend the bulk of my time with people, not overlooking spreadsheets of numbers and lawyer terms on grants and loans and stuff like that. And so I said, I think it's time for a change. And I came home and I talked to my wife, and that was another part of my story. I'll tell you that story later.
Yeah.
You'll have to come back to that. But I said, I think this is the time I'm going to try to start this new thing called YoungLife. And the history was one of the students I had worked with back in Colorado had become a local YoungLife director in Colorado. And YoungLife has about 25 of these, they call them camps, but they should be called 5-star resorts around the country.
Okay.
And there's a bunch in the Southwest and Texas, California, Colorado, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia. But there's one in Minnesota, and it's not too far from here. It's called Detroit Lakes on Pelican Lake, called Castaway Club. They purposely don't call it camp; they call it Castaway Club. And I went down to visit them with my wife, and we were blown away at the quality of this place. It is like pristine, flower-lined sidewalks. Instead of having hamburger night for the kids, they have steak night for the kids.
Jeez.
They don't just have one ski nautique boat. They have 5 ski nautique boats. They're taking these kids out doing wakeboarding, wake surfing. They had, back in the day when the legal allowed it, they did parasailing on the lake. It's the only place they did parasailing in all of Minnesota, I'm pretty sure. It was so, my wife and I were like, the biggest though was what happened at night when the kids gathered, and you get 400 to 500 students from around the country who come, and they're not necessarily all out for God by any means, but when they get in that room, God meets them, and they become this united, attracted force to the creator of the world, and they respond with energy and excitement and joy. And I was like, we need this in Grand Forks. It brought me back to me when I was a kid. I got to go to those things.
Yeah.
And I was like, my wife and I now have soon to be have 3 children, and we're like, when I look at the state of Grand Forks, I'm like, there is not an energy to the youth for our city in their faith development. I look at kids in this town love their hockey. If you're a guy, they dream about playing hockey. Yeah. We have one of the best hockey development programs I've ever seen. My nephew lived here for a bunch of years, and then moved back to Colorado. And he's one of their top players just because he was groomed to play hockey in Grand Forks, and they know how to do it. Another program, I like to give the SPA program here in Grand Forks. It's a theater program for students. It's one of the best programs for getting kids not only connected with each other, but teaching them how to do drama, how to do acting, all that good. And it attracts students. That's students awesome. They'll say, Mom and Dad, I don't want to go on our summer vacation. I want to do this. But when it comes to faith, kids were like, do I have to go? Do I have to go to Camp Mom? And I'm like, we're changing that script. And I said, let's start Young Life in Grand Forks. But where we started was unique. And should I go there? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What we started with was the college side. Because everything Young Life does is predicated on the mentor word again. And that, remember how I alluded to, is there someone besides a mom or a dad that can invest in the life of a young person and it changes the trajectory of their life? That's what I'm in the business of, is working with finding college students who will connect with God and then with the help of adult, go into the life of a middle schooler or a high schooler and help them say, you have value, you have meaning, I care for you, tell me your story. And by the way, there's a God that made you, and he'll be with you the rest of your life, and he'll change the course of your life if you really believe it.
Wow.
And we start that doing that. So I started by working at the university. I have a lot of friends over there. Right. Back in the day, I was a fraternity guy, and so I still hang out at this fraternity as one of their alumni advisors. Yep. And that's not, once again, when you think fraternity guys, you don't think Bible guys or Christian guys at all. No. But that's part of it. One of the mantras of this organization is you go to where people are at. Instead of waiting for people to come to you, you go to where kids are at. And so where are kids at college at? UND has a good chunk who are in that fraternity, and they're not going to church. And so we're going there. And so I go and I started connecting with these guys. And of course, they all like to party and everyone likes that. That's fine, But I said, what about, usually there's a reason they go drink too much or try and do too much. It's because there's an emptiness inside and they want something more to fill themselves. And I say, hey, I can tell you about that. And that is where I started with these guys. And I got some of these fraternity, sorority gals. They came, started doing what we call club, which is a midweek thing, which is basically 3 F's. We feed them, we give them some food, we do a fun little thing, and then finally I give a quick faith story. I keep it really simple. And then after that, I move into just offering if they'd like to do more one-on-ones. And that's the other thing, is winning the right to be heard. And that is all about going to them on their terms, meeting them when they have a moment, and just winning, like saying, I care about you. What's your story? And once they know you care, then they start to open up more and they really listen. So those are two of our big, go to where kids are at and win the right to be heard. And then the third one, and this is a good one, is, all right, this gospel, I've said that term a couple times. It means good news. That's what gospel means. And if it's really good news, why are most people thinking it's one of the most boring hours of their life sitting in a church, right? Yeah. And so we have a rule that you go to where they're at, you win the right to be heard, and then it's a sin to bore a kid with the gospel. You better make it fun.
Make it fun. Yeah,
so,
I like that.
So we do a lot of that with, like, at the college level, we take them on adventures. We've gone on, like, my ultimate adventure. I took a bunch of college kids in the day on I called it a spiritual awakening adventure, sailing around the Virgin Islands. Had a buddy that was a captain of our ship, flew him out to the BVI. We flew around the we sailed around the British Virgin Islands, camped at different places all on this boat. We've gone to Montana for ski trips. We've gone to just around here. We go to Turtle River for biking trips. We go to the fertile sand hills to go climb those sand hills. We've done kayaking trips up on the Pembina Gorge. So we just try and always find something that either outdoor, even on campus. We meet at the gymnasium, and there's a racquetball court there, and we turn it into what's called volleyball, where you play volleyball off the walls, and we get it crazy and going on. We do things that attract. We do trivia nights in the union and give away gift cards and stuff like that. So we try different avenues that just to meet people where they're at, and then when we do gather, we have a lot of fun, and we try and tell the gospel in a compelling way that connects the Bible story to their story.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So your program and your mission, I mean, this is your mission so how many college kids does this take to be fulfilled for you?
Oh my goodness. So Mark, that's the I'll try and paint the big 30,000 foot view, and then I'll answer that specific question. So Young Life as a whole exists to help people to connect with each other and with God. So we have the 3 buzzwords. We do community, we do adventure, and we do significance. Okay? Yep. Those are our 3. So you heard me. I told you some adventure stories. I told you the community stories.
Yep.
The significant story is that then we take those colleges as they get more mature to say, would you like to invest in the life of a younger person? And so 2 years ago, we started college. A year ago, we started the middle school ministry. We took one of those college students
Yep.
who graduated. She joined our team as a staff person.
Oh, wow.
She opened up the middle school division, and we took a bunch of kids to camp, and now she's getting some of those other college kids that I'm sending her way, and they're discipling these middle school kids. And now those middle school kids are growing up, and they're becoming high school kids. So this summer, we're launching our high school division, and that's where all the funding that you talked about through these golf tournaments and everything comes in to support our middle school, high school, and college. And we need, I would say, like we have over 100+ students that come on any given, to our events. I've had connections with. But I'd say only about maybe a dozen, maybe even half of that, like are really 6 or so are really ready to go to be mentors. Got about a dozen in the training ground, that I'm working with.
Okay.
And the other 80 to 90 are still in the checking things out, building relationships, that kind of stage. Does that give you a sense?
Yeah,
and then, so those 6, I've sent them on to our middle school director currently.
Wow.
And she's working with them and helping them love on these middle school kids.
Wow. Yeah, this is, so I'm sure it's challenging not even to get people to commit. And that's probably your hardest thing. And, I think even as an entrepreneur, you can reflect, it's like once you commit to doing something, you're all in. I think once those college kids can commit to something, which
you nailed the ultimate question. You talked about you can take risks and be at peace a little bit. Where I am currently, this is my current state where I'm being college students post-pandemic have become even more flaky, even more overwhelmed. They get overwhelmed so easy. I think they've been coddled a little bit more, and they're just not used to. So they come to UND and they realize, I got to fly because I'm aviation students, or I got to take a test, and they said they were coming. They just, I can't do it. I'm overwhelmed. And I've been frustrated with that very piece, the lack of willing to follow through. And I've realized this is where you have to have faith, because if that's the story of my relationship with God Almighty, is how many times have I said, hey, God, I'm going to do this. Hey, God, I'm going to be for you. Hey, God, I'm all in. And how many times I flake on God, and what does God do? He get, I'm frustrated with you, Becker. You're out of here. No. He says, I'm here when you're ready.
Gotcha.
I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to, when you're ready, I'm here.
Right.
And I've trying to take that attitude towards these students and say, when you're ready, I'm here. And I can tell you're stressed out and you're not going to want to connect for a little bit. And some of it, I don't want them to, they're literally too busy. But most students, I think, if you look back in your life and you look at your college years, most people have the capacity to do some stuff. They just don't have the organizational skills yet to figure it out.
Yeah. I'll tell you, even in the construction industry, like if we relate to that, there used to be a dozen or better college kids. We could barely get 1 or 2. You know what I mean? So I think it's just changed in the last, I've only been in business 13 years.
Yep.
But it's changed just drastically in the 13 years I've been in business.
Yes.
I used to find kids all the time.
Yes.
And they just, and we're in blue collar. we're in North Dakota.
Supposedly we have the best work ethic in the nation, right?
Yeah, right.
And yet even here, trying to get people to work, not easy.
So
not easy to commit.
People for the young students and committing is complicated. And we always talk about unfollow the herd, and it's like, okay, well, is college the best thing, or is it just are they using it as a tool to procrastinate, drink, do the fun things in life, but it's more of a tool of procrastination and figuring themselves out.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get these students committed to something that they basically went to college probably to be, some not committed, but some have a path, right?
Right.
You're going to be a doctor, and you're hopefully committed.
Right. And they do, some of those more. And UND attracts, in one sense, I think a little better kids, because the dominant majors at UND are more professional majors: medical, nursing, aviation, where there's a career track. It's not like liberal arts, humanities, and philosophy. Right. But still, you're right. I think there's a reason, and even this whole pandemic has changed so many things. One of them being even just the presence on campus. Yeah. A large number of these students, UND supposedly still has 14,000 students, but I think a good chunk of them are online, and they aren't on campus, and they sit at home and they do their things, and it's changed. They built this beautiful new union, and we get to be there every day. But even there, it feels less full than the past, and I think it's because there's just less people on campus and less. The learning the social skills of interconnecting is actually taking more time and more work post-pandemic, what I'm finding.
Yeah, well, for sure.
So these are just observations on a different topic altogether. And
Well,
I'm sure
I think it's all important though.
Yeah.
It all leads to the bigger topic. So I wanna kind of maybe back up a little bit into you, or you went into business how long you been in business, or you're how long?
Well, I've been with YoungLife for 2 years. I started, that's my entrepreneurial gig. But I was a business major, 35 years ago. And so I continue, I feel like I've been in the business world for 35 years because I worked in the corporate world for a couple of years. Then I worked in the not large nonprofit world for about a dozen. And then I worked at Hope for about a dozen. And I've been in this one for 2.
Wow. And so it was COVID basically times when you decided like, hey, this is the calling. And then it also happened to be a pandemic.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy.
So any thoughts that ran through your mind there? Nothing. God was calling for.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, what did I say? The first thing you do, our rule of thumb is to go to where students are at. In the pandemic, you don't go anywhere. You stay at home with your mask on. So that first year, I fortunately had relationship with those fraternities. That's why I started there, to be honest.
Got it.
Because I had some relationship. So I could not meet on campus. I didn't even go. They didn't want anyone at UND, obviously, because they closed pretty much the whole campus. So all I had was Zoom calls with these guys, and I had a little help. We got a couple bigger name musicians that are Christians that some of these guys knew and stuff like that, and they would put on a concert and it was lame. And I look back because we were watching the concert on all trying to talk and chat. And I was like, this is not, YoungLife is so about people and connection.
Yeah.
But it was all we could do in the beginning. And then we had to meet off campus all the time. So my new favorite place became Culver's back room because I could at least get people, and we'd have to sit, 6 feet of those tables. We'd have one kid per table. And then eventually we learned the rules. Like we got to come back on campus year 2. But you had to wear masks all the time, and masks just don't always.
Yeah,
I mean, I get why they're good, but I just realized it was really hard to. You don't feel connected, so we always had food. That's part of why I brought food, because the rule was if you had food, you could take your mask off.
Yeah,
so we'd linger. Those cookies would last the whole time, and so we could talk or whatever. So those are some things. It's been a difficult. I mean, I think a little bit slower start than I had envisioned. I had this transformative vision. I've told you my vision. I see Grand Forks being a city where there's 300 to 500 young people between the ages of 12 to 24 that are just diving hard for God. And there's such you think about around here, I think a lot of people know WeFest, right?
Yeah.
You know, the energy that goes on at WeFest. Mm-hmm. Imagine that energy on a weekly basis of young people in the city. And that's my vision. But it hasn't quite gotten there. We're still more on any given week, we'll have a couple dozen college students, a couple dozen middle schoolers. Okay. And then in the next year, we hope to get that. But we need to amp it up into the 30s and 40s. And that's part of what we're doing with adding staff as well as because it takes people
to reach.
And even with the number of college kids I'm working with, I need another staff person to take the next batch of kids.
Right.
Because you can only do, typically Jesus had 12 disciples. That's about all you typically invested is 12 people. On a
Gotcha.
So we kind of keep that ratio of 1 to 12.
Gotcha. And so you raise money to try to bring in new staff members to help support more people.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a winning model. I mean, it is.
We're very
it's a giving model.
We're a people based. We don't own a building. We don't own things. We are fortunate that people open up. Like we meet at the university. They have the union for us to use. The middle schoolers, they meet in parents' homes, or various organizations around town. Businesses have opened up everything from, we meet at Play It. This is a new center next to Aldi here in town that the kids love, all the athletic stuff there. Yeah. They can't wait to get on the go-karts. Well, they probably like pickleball too, but the go-karts coming at over at the Northern Air.
Yep.
We've met at Splashers Water Park. So once a month we do a big kind of more fun event for the middle schoolers, and then the other 3 Sundays a month we meet in a parent's home. And parents just, a lot of parents have these basements that are set up for bunch of kids just to squeeze in together and play some crazy games. We do a lot of minute to win it games in there and stuff like that. And then the kids hear those 3 things: the food, the faith, and the fun. And boy, you got those. It wins.
They win.
It's a winning
And that's middle school, college, and
we keep them distinct to their age group.
Okay, got
it. We
have
that kind of format going on. So currently, college is Wednesday nights. Middle school Sunday nights, high school we got to pick a new day, and then obviously the goal would be to have when you get this big enough to have one per high school, like one for Central kids, one for Red River kids, one for East Side kids.
Got it.
And Thompson could grow in there.
Yes.
And so they just all, when I look at Denver, which has been doing this for a long time, that's their model. They have one for each of the geographic parts of Denver, the high schools, and it's every night of the week something's going on. So it's just a matter of how long it takes to get there.
Got it. So where I'm going to kind of dive into where are we going then? Where do you see YoungLife going? I know you have a vision, and where's it going from here?
Well, as I said, we want Grand Forks to have, I mean, obviously we hear some of the tragedies of the drug culture. That's like, fentanyl and all these laced drugs that young people have been dying from. And it's like, what are they looking for? And then, of course, you may have heard recently some of the statistics with suicide and depression being at epic levels. And, and it's like, so we know there's the need. And at the end of the day, the need will be met by people who care for people right where they're at. And ultimately, I believe, and the Bible teaches, that every human's made by God, and he wants a relationship with that individual. And that when you know that you're loved and you're safe and you're accepted by your creator and a human person who's enveloping those, it changes your heart. And when you have a heart of hope, you can start to be a giver and not look to be a taker. You can start to be a dreamer, not to be a recluse. All those things that we need in our society. So that's the vision. So what's going on? Well, at the college level, I think it's called Be Faithful. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm looking for a few more adult volunteers that want to invest in the lives of college kids. That's one action. I'm always on who are some other adults that have a heart for college-age kids that can help me beat this. At the middle school level, we have our director, and she has set a goal to double. Like last year, we sent about a dozen kids to camp. This year, she said, let's go for 24. And I go, I think we're going to get closer to 30. And already we're growing. We're on the track to hit 30 because there's more people hearing about the amazingness of this camp. And one of like a lot of camps out there, by the way, the counselors are great, but they stay at the camp all summer. For us, we require our leaders to go to camp with the kids. Yeah. So these leaders are pretty committed because they'll take a week of vacation from their work to go to this place and get slime put on their face and whatever else that the kids are doing, because they know they go home with those kids, and those kids then get to see their leaders say, I saw you have the high at camp, but now when your friends want you to go do the Slurpee ditching and you're wondering, what do you do? I'm there with you. Whatever it might be, that the leader goes with the kid through life. That's cool. And that's really a significant piece of our story. And I say, so we're looking for a few more college. I'm got a few more I'm meeting with. I've told you I had a bunch of meetings this afternoon. Yes. I'm meeting with some of them. Friday afternoons are a decent time to meet college kids because they're a little less stressed by that point. So I'm going to go hang out with them and help direct them to be middle school leaders. That's awesome. High school is the biggest, dude. And that high school is really formative because middle school, their kids are really attached to parents still. High school is when they start to distance themselves, ask the faith, is this faith my own? Around this part of the world, it's because a lot of confirmation kids, they go because their mom and dad make them, and as soon as they're confirmed, they're out of church, right? That's how if you ask a typical person around here is raised casual Lutheran, casual Catholic, they go, as soon as mom and dad stop making me go to confirmation, I'm done. Yeah. And that's the high school years. Gotcha. And we are committed to having these leaders ready. So one of the things we're doing is we do 2 big fundraisers a year to help raise the staff because we got to hire the staff person. Right. And when the funding is, we've done really well for the 2 years we've been in business. We've had a sold out golf tournament, and I like to think of it as what I hear from the people who've golfed is they say, Keith, this is one of the most well-run golf tournaments, but what differentiates it is it's one of the most youth-focused. Of the 140-some golfers that show up, about 30 to 40 of them are either teenagers and college kids. And they just bring an energy and a go-get-itness and a fun factor to the whole tournament. And so, once again, we're looking for individuals to golf. We still have a few openings for individual golfers.
And we'll link that below. We'll get that link for
Perfect. And then I'm looking for some businesses or individuals to say, I want to support one of those 30 to 40 kids and be a youth team. We have a whole youth track, and they have their own prizes. And these are kids who, like, they don't slow the pace of play down. They're gamers. They know how to push it and they know golf etiquette, so they can push it. But at the same time, there's an energy and some of the fun games we have on the course as well.
It is fun.
It's a little
the
more,
basket head.
Yes, exactly. We call it bucket head.
Or bucket head.
Exactly.
There you go.
So anyways, and then that's one of the biggest opportunities to raise funds. And then the other one is we bring a special speaker in every year, and usually it's in the month of September. And we've got some things in the work on that. We've hosted it at the Union on campus because they have these beautiful ballrooms.
Right.
And because we're a student organization, we get to host it there. And we'll look forward to having your readers hear about that.
Yeah. I'm excited about that. Hopefully I make that this year. And then, so if I am let's just say I'm a college kid.
Yep.
How am I finding out about YoungLife? Like if I wanna support it, how am I doing that? Where am I seeing it at?
Yep. So primarily we target University of North Dakota. Obviously, those open to any 18 to 24-year-old. Okay. So the main location that we do like print media and like advertising is on the billboards at UND. They have these rolling screens where you, as a student organization, you can enter. And I enlist the power of my students who are a lot better at technology to create these things on Canva, and they make it look cool, and then they just put it on that. And then there's a calendar that you have to request rooms at the Union, and then they advertise, here's the daily who's using the Union rooms, and so people can find it that way. So that's as far as like being present on the campus. That's our main way. Cool. But then the biggest thing is Instagram. That's kids carry their phones around, right? Yep. And so
I get you on Instagram more.
Well, that's the problem. I'm like, I'm trying to move that direction, but what I've done is smart. I've got a kid, or college student, who knows how to run it, and they just pummel it with. We try like. Someone, when I was starting, I said, okay, I want a minimum of 3 posts a week just to kind of help. Yeah. And then, of course, they can take it and run with it. But, those posts are, one is more of a, here's what's coming. One of them is more of a, here's what we did for a club. Yeah. And then one of them is more just inspirational news. Yeah. And I've had an education in how to do Instagram because I'm still old school, like thinking, and I've had to be a learner. And as an entrepreneur, that's one of the things you got to continue to do is be a learner, right?
I had to hire a mentor just for that area of my life. It's like you didn't think you had to go back to social media, but it's where everyone's where the views are.
So and then when it comes to middle school, it's a different audience.
Sure.
Because who decides where they're going? Mom and dad.
Yep.
So it's all about connecting with parents, and our middle school director worked in schools for a little bit, and so she knew that there's this app out there called the Remind app. And basically, it's something that schools use to communicate with parents. And so she's adapted it to a way to primary communicate in that every week. Then that goes out. We have an Instagram page for the middle schoolers because that's what they want to look at, the kids themselves. And then she's my middle school director. She's 20-something-year-old. And so she's real good at posting on Instagram and making it fun and hip and all that kind of stuff. But that's how the kids know. But kids don't necessarily get to things. It's usually mom and dad that say. So we really, a lot of our new kids that come, they come somewhat because middle schools invite their friends, but mostly because middle school parents say, hey, you have a middle school parent. Our kid's benefiting from this. Your kid might too. And that is how the growth of the middle school stuff is going.
Gotcha. We'll shoot a reel after this, so you can be on social media, and then we'll have Jen edit it, and you can post that on your social media. See if you can reach any more.
Yeah, I like it.
So, all right. So how do this all takes money to operate, though.
You bet it does. That's the business side.
So if I'm on the other side, if I'm just a parent or something, how do I give money to this program? How much money are you looking to raise? You must have big goals. I mean, if you wanted to grow it, you need money to do it.
Yep. You're right. And it's big picture. I can talk straight money stuff because it's in my head, A, and B, I know it matters. Like I know there's certain people out there that I go, I want to make sure you're being integral stewardship. Because as I said, if you can talk about the money, you can talk about almost anything.
Absolutely.
And I'm very committed to this being a open, honest, transparent organization. So first and foremost, we're part of a larger group called YoungLife International in Colorado Springs. That's our headquarters. Okay. And they have to do everything by the book and make sure that we're the 501c3 nonprofit status. Everything goes through them. All the money goes through them. Okay. Everything is it's audited by a major auditor, and and that there's an organization out there measures nonprofits and how much of the money goes to the actual ministry and how much is going to admin or whatever. And we're in the highest rankings of that. And so first and foremost, I want you to hear that it's not just a flyby operation. It's not just Keith on his own putting the money under the mattress and pulling it. It's all, I don't touch it. It goes straight to Colorado Springs, and everything is run above board with high integrity and high productivity. So that's the first thing I want you to hear. Yep. Second thing I want you to hear is that within our local entity, anything that is given and marked ND30 stays in Grand Forks. So there's a way, as the beauty part, so you can really make a huge difference when you give. It stays here and helps here. Now, I do pay a yearly fee for some of the services on those accounting features and legal features that they offer at Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
But it's a fair rate and everything like that. So, anyway, so with that, we ballpark currently are in the just under 200,000 a year for our annual budget that pays for our staffing, pays for our camp scholarships, because these camps, not only are they 5-star resorts, they're a little bit more expensive than your backyard Bible camp that maybe some of us think in our mind.
Right.
And so we are really pushed. That's where a lot of this golf money goes, is for kids' scholarships.
Gotcha.
And because we're going to send, 20, 30 kids to camp, and we're going to pump out $200 to $300 per kid.
Wow.
And then we'll ask the kid. It's important for the kid to still have investment, but we really try and subsidize that for the family. And if money is the issue that ultimately prevents we'll make it happen for that child to get there.
Wow.
So
That's
we're committed to
awesome.
that. So like one of the things that we're most recently having the privilege of and we have monthly givers that are maybe about half or 2/3 of and then we have some one-time gifts, and then we have these 2 big events currently. And we're looking at a 3rd event. You'll have to tell us what you think of it.
Yeah.
It's going big in other places, and trap shooting. And having a trap shooting. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of become a new thing. I guess axe throwing, trap shooting.
Yeah.
It's this get people out and shoot guns and have some funding with that too.
Can you raise some money through that?
Exactly. So that's our newest one. We're exploring adding that on. So if you have some listeners who go, I'll help you run with that, and I know how to do trap shooting.
Yeah.
Contact me, because I don't have a contact in that world yet. Well, but
let's do it. Let's do it. Well, I think if anyone has any idea on how to raise money for the Young Life program, I mean, you have this year. How have to raise how much money?
This is just about $180,000.
About $180,000. So if you have an idea, leave a comment. We'll get it to Keith, and he would love to entertain anything that would help benefit their program. Or if you want to even donate to this money, if you don't need, or if you can't participate in any of these activities, I imagine you have a link where we can support you.
You bet we do. And
so we'll have everything below. You can find it for Keith too. So
yes. Let me give you one last on the funding.
Yeah.
So the big need we have now is, as we're adding middle school and high school soon, it's getting kids around, right? They need rides. And the best way to get them around is these 12-passenger vans. So we have put some requests in to some local auto dealers in town and a local foundation that like project-based giving more rather than like staffing. They like just one time. If you have more of a one, and so we're looking to raise, in addition to that 180, another 100 maybe, because we're looking at 1 to 2 to 3 vans, because 12, 24, 36 people. And if you could help, we'd love to see it. That's the one thing we would like to have, a little bit of a fleet of vans, because not only the camps, but then the middle school kids during the week, some of the parents are like, come from tough families, and their parents are not going to get them, or their parents are working and can't. So if we could have our leaders driving around with this fleet of vans, that'd be a big win for us. So that's a specific vision that this next year, we're hoping to raise 50 to 100, maybe 150,000 for vans that we can put into effect, so we can really adequately meet the needs of middle school, high school kids.
That'd be awesome, because then your limitations are gone. You can go where you want, and all the kids are safe. And
these camps, they go every quarter. We have like summer every quarter of the year, like winter, summer. The big one's the summer one. That's the multi-day one. But we have weekend ones in the fall and the spring, and then there's usually one like a ski trip in the winter. So that's where those vans get used for all those. So if you start taking it, they'll be used almost every weekend and every day of the week. We'll have clubs going on, and they'll be in use.
Wow. Jeez. Well, we're hoping that we can raise some money for you. We're going to be a supporter of your golf tournament again. We've always, your vision, it's not easy what you do. You have a lot of passion towards it, and most visionaries or entrepreneurs like yourself, it can be a struggle, right? Getting commitments and raising money, and it's what it takes to do good things in the community. So if you can support Keith, he touches his fingerprints all over this community. I mean, you support Grand Forks stronger than anyone I know, I think. It's like we have Bochinski in last week, and his struggles with trying to getting the community off the ground as well.
Right.
It's
Grand Forks is it's a special town. It's one of the greatest places to raise a family, but there's some I don't know, in one sense, apathy, or just kind of we don't deserve anything special. We're just Grand Forks. And I'm like, there's better days ahead for us as a community.
Absolutely.
And I wanted, that's a big win. And Mark, I just, I don't know, how do I put it here? I guess when you said, that it takes vision, it takes funding, all that kind of stuff, it does. But at the same time, this goes back to, I do believe that there's something greater than us that's leading this.
Yeah.
And our job is just, that's the be faithful part of life.
Gotcha.
I just feel like I've been called to be faithful, show up, and he'll take care of the rest.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I got a couple of questions for you, Keith.
Okay, these are some, let's go.
Before you get out, you didn't get these. You didn't get these. So now we're going to really fast forward. I know we talked a little bit about the future of YoungLife, but almost if you closed your eyes and you said, well, in 5 years, where do you envision yourself almost maybe personally and business-wise? Because I know we've been talking mainly business, but where do you envision yourself?
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so we're talking 2028.
Yeah.
Where do you want to be?
Well, here's the crazy part for me, Mark, is I do operate in those 5-year goal patterns, right?
Okay,
you already know that.
Good. We already know that.
But I kind of started the clock in 2020. So I'm 2.5 almost years into the first 5-year plan, which was to have all 3 entities up and running: college, middle school, high school.
Cool.
And on the trajectory of bringing, a couple hundred kids from the Grand Cities areas to these camps that I think what happens when they get so energized and then they come back with their leaders and they live it out, and then they eventually, half of the kids are going to stay in the area, either at UND, NDSU, and there's YoungLife at Fargo, there's YoungLife. That's another beautiful part about YoungLife. Once you get involved in the YoungLife in Grand Forks and you go, if they do go away to college, there's YoungLife in Minneapolis, Mankato State, St. Cloud.
Cool.
I mean, all those universities have it at the college level, so you can stay and keep growing and by that point you're then not just taking in, but you're giving back and you're serving the kids in Minneapolis or St. Cloud or whatever city they go to. But so we're 2.5 years in, and we've got 2 of the steps. We're looking to finish the 3rd, get the high school going. And then the piece that I'm looking at a little bit for feel is right now, I feel like YoungLife is in the church world, I think we're getting known. But in the school world, we're still that's where I want principals, teachers, cafeteria workers to know, counselors, that if there's a kid who's going through a hard time, that there's a YoungLife resource out there. Obviously, that's our schools have to be really cautious with the faith connection, but they can know that we will be just loving a person right where they're at. There's no expectation that they take this faith and run with it or whatever. And we could, if there is a suicide or something like that happens in the East Grand Forks area, that we could be there to help just care for kids, and that teachers would know there's a group of people under the YoungLife banner, volunteers and staff, that would be there to support them. I really, and then the other piece, kind of a big picture where we go in 5 years, is that parents are going, oh shoot, we thought we were going to our, California summer vacation, but it's during YoungLife Camp Week. We got to move our whole schedule around. That's a goal for me, is when parents have to reschedule their vacations around ARCA, because it's such a big deal. When there's 100. So those are a couple of visions that I have for the next few years. And let me just tell you one other story. I think a story helps convey it. So our middle school director met with this girl, and this girl has been adopted by this family, and she was just expressing that it's really hard sometimes when you come from an adopted setting. You always question my birth mom, birth dad, and this middle school director of ours was able to meet with her, and her story is a little bit rougher. And oftentimes when you have brokenness in your life, God will redeem that brokenness and heal you first and foremost, but secondly, we'll use it to help another. And so our youth leader, this middle school director, has been in the process of being healed from some of her middle or younger years stuff. And she was able to say, I understand, I relate, I was in that similar setting, and here's some of the ways I've been able to feel first and foremost connected to my adopted family, but also to my Heavenly Father who always has been with me. And being able to, and I just want you to know that when that trajectory and that story changes, it changes the trajectory of that young girl.
Yeah.
And I think that's the story that I want to see more, rather than turning to I want to hear Andy. We love Andy, the sheriff in town, and we want him to be able to drug use is on the way down. They're talking about adding onto our jail. And I'm like, man, wouldn't it be great if our jails didn't need to be added onto?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be great if all, we have the whole, like everyone says we need mental health. And I agree, we do in this, but faith is part of that. And what if the number of doctors, like we hardly have to prescribe drugs anymore. We hardly have to, because people are dealing, there's a new article out, like obesity, another thing. I think, why do people have such an obesity area? One, we have good food. We have good grandmas who cook really well in this part of the world. But I think it's because people look into food to bring a little hope and pleasure into their life. And they don't know they got to stay active. And if they stay active and do something with all these adventures we're doing, they burn off those, and they feel better. And so all of it works together. And that's my vision. So I know it's a little bit far-flung. I have my specific metrics that I'm measured on. And once again, in the faith area, you don't control faith decisions, but you control the number of students I know. That's what I'm measured on. How like that? I said there's about 100 plus coming to college. There's about 50 plus that have connections to the middle school. Those both need to be metriced up, and I've got those metrics that I'm working on.
That's awesome.
And it's all about relationship and caring and adding on volunteers, because as I said, typically you can only have one person per 12. So you better have, if you want 200, you better have that number or volunteers.
Exactly.
So
absolutely.
So that's where I'm at right now. Wow. It's the 5-year plan. And I just think it'll be when our city knows those couple tangible, when parents know it, when teachers know us, we'll have arrived. So those are my more intangible measurements.
Yeah, I love that, man. No, you're good. You're doing big things, and keep grinding. You're maybe a little further than halfway through. You're hitting the goals? It sounds like
that's the amazing thing.
Yeah,
you're hitting through a pandemic,
right?
And that's crazy that it's going, Mark. That's why I say I believe there's a as any entrepreneur knows, you got to have something in you that's calling you and moving you, and I still have that call.
That's awesome. You got to have it. Last question, Keith. What does unfollow the herd mean to you?
Well, the first would, being a North Dakota Sioux fan, it means let's not be the bison. So I don't know if you got
like that. Anyone can appreciate that.
Exactly. Grand Forks people can.
Grand Forks can. For sure.
But obviously, the meaning is that the herd is just going down the road almost blindly, just following. And I'm going to go back to the Bible, as a good pastor would. Jesus tells the story that the road to destruction is wide and many are on it, but the road to life is narrow and few find it. And unfollow the herd is saying, I'm going to look up. I'm going to see this new road. Good old Robert Frost. I found two paths, and the one that was least traveled I took. And I think there's something beautiful about this idea that there's a creator who made you, has a unique story for you. You don't have to just do what everyone else does, because that, my friend, is the YoungLife story that I grew up with. When I had that, going back to my 7th grade year, when I had that youth leader who said, Keith, you don't just have to try and be good because to please your parents and try and figure out how to deal with it. He goes, God accepts you just as you are and will give you a new hope and a future and a new life.
Wow.
Just go your way. And so unfollow the herd. It means be open to that God loves you just as you are, has a specific plan for you, lean into it, and then you can love others when you know that you're loved already. So those are some of my immediate thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I obviously like the seeing it with you lived out with, I'm going to go back to our day at Wild Hog, and I remember you talking about your business, and I remember you saying, yeah, I'm kind of a disruptor.
And that's what I kind of figured out.
Exactly. And I just said, yes, let's bring some new life. And that's what this unfollow the herd is new life. So you could interchange those two words.
That's true. It's true. Yeah. Unfollow the herd is just something that stuck with me. It's really where my life has started and where it's going.
Yep.
Finding your path. So Keith, appreciate you, man.
Feel it. Hey, I don't know how many times on podcasts you do a prayer, but can I close in a quick prayer? Okay.
Absolutely.
Dear God, you have done an amazing thing in Mark's life, his family's life. And I thank you so much for our friendship. I've watched this guy grow up over the years, and he brings his zest for life. And I know that it's driven first and foremost from his connection with you, God. And I want his listeners to know that he is a man that has been seeking you to be the inspiration behind all that he tries to do and the way he cares for people. And I know he cares for the people on this podcast. And so we pray for those people on this podcast who will be touched right now, that there's a God who accepts them, who loves them, who has a plan for them, who can help them unfollow the herd and go their way, knowing that God is with you. And so I pray for favor on all those listeners right now, that maybe there's a touch and maybe someone want to do something with Young Life. I'd love to hear from those, but Lord, you do something with each of those folks right now in this moment. You're a God that meets us right where we're at. And I know you're touching someone's heart right now. Amen.
Amen. Appreciate you, Keith. Hey, find some links below. Find Keith. Blessed man. Blessed for knowing this man. And we'll see you guys in the next one.